my friends. You've landed on the YouTube channel that is a classroom called Menopause University. And like all students who attend university, you are striving to learn. And learning about menopause includes learning about Alzheimer's disease. And that's because you need to know how to avoid it if you wish to continue learning for the rest of your life. This is video 241. It's the 6th video on Alzheimer's. And if you're wondering how long this unit will be, it will be very, very long. Longer than the unit on osteoporosis, which was 35 videos. Now, in these first 5 videos on Alzheimer's, I have already taught you about the basic building block of your brain, which is the neuron, and which constitutes the connections for information transfer, the surrounding myelin, which constitutes the coating to insulate the neurons, how your brain builds up and breaks down, a simplified version of brain anatomy, and the different kinds of memory. So today we're going to talk about the different kinds of dementia. In my book, I just jumped right into Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is all of chapter 33. But not all problems with memory are due to Alzheimer's, so I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity to present them all here in this video. When I talk to women who have a relative with any kind of memory problem, they are very often unsure as to whether it's Alzheimer's or some other kind of dementia. So this video may help you assess the likelihood of Alzheimer's if you suspect it in any of your relatives. You know I like to start at the beginning, and since the title of this video is Different Kinds of Dementia, we need to start with the definition of dementia. And even though certain medical terms are very common, I never assume that you know their proper meanings. And that's because, actually, the majority of people really don't. So let's look at some definitions of dementia and see if they're consistent or variable. Wikipedia defines dementia as a broad category of diseases that cause long-term and gradual decrease in the ability to think and remember to an extent that affects daily functioning. The Alzheimer's Association defines dementia as an overall term for diseases and conditions characterized by a decline in memory, language, problem solving, and other thinking skills that affect a person's ability to perform everyday activities. The World Health Organization defines dementia as a syndrome in which there is deterioration in memory, thinking, behavior, and the ability to perform everyday activities. The National Institutes of Health defines dementia as a loss of thinking, remembering, and reasoning skills that is not a normal part of aging. The dictionary defines dementia as a chronic or persistent disorder of mental processes caused by brain disease or injury and marked by memory disorders, personality changes, and impaired reasoning. As you can see, there isn't just one definition of dementia, and that alone can make diagnosis of dementia fairly difficult. But the key features to keep in mind, the common features, are the following. Dementia is not just one disease. It encompasses a spectrum of diseases. It is gradual, progressive, and chronic. It affects the brain and it impairs thinking and memory. So with that as our foundation, let's briefly touch on the different kinds of dementia. Now, you know I'm not going to go into great detail here. My goal is merely to make you aware of the other entities with which Alzheimer's can be confused. So while I will not go into great detail about all the dementias, I will, in subsequent videos, go into detail about Alzheimer's itself. What you'll see is that different kinds of dementia affect different kinds of memory. I presented the different kinds of memory in the last video. You might remember this unfinished chart we created on different kinds of memory. It depicts all the different kinds of memory, but it's still blank. So today we'll fill it in with the different kinds of dementia so that you can see how they differ. And we're going to change the title of the chart to Different Kinds of Dementia. First, I'll list the various kinds of dementia, and then I'll tell you how they differ in terms of the kind of memory that is affected by each. It is not my goal for you to know about all these different diseases. They are merely an example of the range of diseases that can affect your memory in one way or another. So here's a list of the different kinds of dementia. There's Pick's disease, also known as frontotemporal lobar degeneration, or FTLD. Parkinson's disease, Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, also known as mad cow disease, Huntington's disease, normal pressure hydrocephalus, dementia with Lewy bodies, or DLB, vascular dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and mixed dementia. So let's just start with the first one on the list and work our way down. Pick's disease actually has a much more anatomically specific technical name. And of course, when you hear it, you're glad that I've chosen to call it Pick's disease. Its technical name is frontotemporal lobar degeneration. In other words, it affects the frontal and temporal lobes of your brain. These are the front and sides of your brain. Pick's disease affects your emotional memory and your verbal memory. And Pick's affects people at younger ages than Alzheimer's does. It progresses from voluntary to involuntary memory and from long-term memory to short-term memory. Here's where Pick's disease would fit on our chart. Next is Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's affects your muscles first and your memory later. Its effect on muscles is the reason it's associated with the rolling tremor. With Parkinson's, you can't control your muscles, and it starts out with voluntary movements and then progresses to involuntary movements. And in the short term, only your muscles show evidence of the disease. In the long term, though, it affects your memory. So here it is on our chart. You see, I told you I wouldn't get into all the nitty-gritty details. Now we have Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. This is commonly associated with alcoholism, and it has two names because it has two distinct characteristics. Wernicke's disease is due to vitamin B1 deficiency, which affects your muscle memory and results in loss of coordination in the short term. But with time, it progresses to Korsakoff's syndrome, which entails loss of learning, intuition, and organization memory. So we'll divide this one into its two parts on our chart to reflect the fact that it changes character over time. We'll separate Wernicke's from Korsakoff's. What I've done is place Wernicke's in the cells for voluntary and involuntary short-term muscle memory. And I've placed Korsakoff's in the cells for long-term learning, organizational, and intuitive memory. Now for Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. This is more commonly known as mad cow disease. It's very, very rare, affecting only one person in a million, and the only reason you know about it is because of the name mad cow. It's caused by a protein called prion. It causes twitching and muscle stiffness, which constitute interference with your muscle memory, and it also causes emotional problems. But impaired learning, recognition, and orientation are very late aspects of the disease. And Creutzfeldt-Jakob is fatal. 70% of people die within 1 year. So on our chart, we'll place it in the cells for muscle memory in both the short and long term, and we'll place it in the cells for learning, recognition, and orientation memory in the long term only. And on our chart, I'll just call it mad cow. Next is Huntington's disease. Huntington's is a genetic disease. It causes premature and permanent breakdown of neurons. The symptoms span the gamut. First, there are problems with muscle memory, emotional memory, and intuitive memory, and then it affects verbal memory and learning. But it's progressive, so nothing improves over time, making the early symptoms both short-term and long-term. So here it is on our chart. Now we have normal pressure hydrocephalus. This name means that you build up cerebrospinal fluid in your brain. This is characterized by impairment of muscle memory, emotional memory, and organizational memory. But fortunately, this one is treatable with surgery. So the dementia that is associated with it would be temporary. Here it is on our chart using the short-term cells only in hopes that it is always diagnosed and treated. And I'm just labeling it hydrocephalus on our chart. Now we have dementia with Lewy bodies, or DLB. Lewy bodies are abnormal clumps of protein that can collect in your brain and cause dementia. Dementia with Lewy bodies affects your muscle memory. It can be similar to Parkinson's, but also similar to Alzheimer's. And it affects your orientation memory, intuitive memory, and muscle memory. However, unlike some of the other dementias we've discussed thus far, which involve bodily symptoms like muscle memory loss first and cognitive symptoms second, the order of events is typically reversed in dementia with Lewy bodies. All the symptoms having to do with your brain function occur first. So on our chart, we'll put the brain symptoms in the short-term column and the muscular symptoms in the long-term column. And I'll just call it Lewy bodies. Next is vascular dementia. I would call it VD, but back in the olden days, when I was growing up, VD meant venereal disease. So it's a good thing that VD is not an official acronym for this one. Vascular dementia is the second most common type of dementia. It's caused by lack of blood flow to your brain. Oh my, that sounds a lot like what I taught you about in heart attack and stroke, doesn't it? Well. What you'll discover in later videos is that a lot of the risk factors for heart attack are also risk factors for dementia, including Alzheimer's, which is what we'll address next. The symptoms of vascular dementia may appear either gradually or suddenly. They include impairment of orientation memory, verbal memory, and intuitive memory, along with learning. One of the biggest differences between vascular dementia and Alzheimer's is how they progress. Vascular dementia is characterized by a more stepwise decline in which your level of functioning may stabilize and plateau for a long time before declining. With Alzheimer's, the decline in function is gradual but continuous. You don't plateau for long periods of time. So here's vascular dementia on our chart. Finally, we've worked our way up to Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is the most common kind of dementia. It starts with impairment of intuitive memory, learning, organizational memory, and then progresses to impaired verbal memory, emotional memory, orientation memory, episodic memory, and recognition memory. And then it affects muscle memory. So it eventually affects every kind of memory. This is the one we will spend weeks and weeks discussing. It's the worst kind of dementia and the one we all wish to avoid. So here it is on our chart in every single cell. Lastly, we have something called mixed dementia. Now this is precisely what the name implies. More than one of the dementias on the list. In other words, it's characterized by more than one of the hallmark abnormalities of one kind of dementia. Most commonly, it's Alzheimer's combined with vascular dementia. Alternatively, it can be Alzheimer's plus dementia with Lewy bodies, or it can be all three. And because our chart is so full already, I'm going to skip adding mixed dementia. Notice how the chart font got smaller and smaller as the chart grew. I would love to say that that was a test of your memory, but it really isn't. I just minimize it more and more in order to fit everything on the chart. And you can find the chart in the link just below the screen you're watching. Or you can go to my website, which is menopausetailor.me. And you do not need to commit any of it to memory. It's just a means of seeing the different kinds of dementias in terms of the kind of memory they impair. Now, in addition to various kinds of dementia, there is something called mild cognitive impairment, with the acronym MCI. Mild cognitive impairment is cognitive decline that is greater than normal for your age and education, but not great enough to interfere with your activities of daily living. Behaviors that are consistent with MCI include misplacing things and being unable to find them, or having trouble recalling memories and events that most people recall easily. If you have mild cognitive impairment, you may just retain that level of mental function for the rest of your life. The other possibility is that it can be a precursor to Alzheimer's disease, which is the case in 50% of people with mild cognitive impairment. So if you have this, the best thing to do now is to have an evaluation to assess your current functional level and then compare it to later evaluations of your functional level. In so doing, you could detect Alzheimer's early and possibly slow its progress. But I'm also not going to add mild cognitive impairment to our chart because it's too uncertain and it doesn't qualify as dementia per se. So that does it for the different kinds of dementia. Next week, we'll be ready to start talking specifically about Alzheimer's disease. Until then, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to go to menopausetailor.me to schedule a consultation about anything or everything. I'm always happy to help you. Bye.